Welcome back to ChalkTalk, where we take business, finance, education, entertainment, and mix them all together for you, our viewer.
Yep, to help you better understand the world of business and finance.
Welcome back to another episode.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Cue, welcome back, Carter.
Who's welcome back, Carter?
That's what that song is. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Oh God, I think you're tone deaf.
I am, but no, that's where that sample came from. Anyways.
Says the tone deaf person.
Welcome back.
Telling someone else they're tone deaf.
Now, for the fourth time, welcome back to a new episode.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
Today, debt ceiling. U.S. debt ceiling. How about that?
How about that? Sounds so exciting.
Well, I mean, it's an exciting topic in the news right now, for sure. But
big one.
It's exciting in the terms of happiness, real happy excitement.
The debt ceiling?
It's anxiety inducing. That's right. So let me ask you, when you think of the U.S. debt ceiling, what comes to mind?
How much money we have to spend? I'm assuming.
Yes.
How much money we have to spend? Well, maybe because what I know comes to mind is what it is the debt ceiling is how much money. It's like a savings account for the government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they this is the money that we can pay our bills with, type of thing.
Yeah. Think of it like you got budgeting in your house, and the big man upstairs, or whoever, the big boss, the big wigs, that's the government.
The electric bills for the government.
Yeah, the government's setting everything on fire. I don't know how else to put that. But so what do you think of when you hear the words calamity, chaos, crisis, catastrophe?
All synonyms.
Synonyms. That's what you think of, synonyms? I mean, you are an English teacher, so that's what we do. I get that. But in terms of the debt ceiling.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't done much research personally, but from what I hear, that there's a big problem right now, and that's why they're kind of like going back and forth. Mm-hmm. Republicans and Democrats are going back and forth. The Democrats want the debt ceiling higher, and the Republicans kind of like, nah, let it crash and burn because it's your fault type of thing.
Well, the consensus,
at least politically,
the consensus right now is that they both know that they need to raise the debt ceiling. Like it's not a contention of should it be raised. It's how
much,
and the stipulations behind it.
The stipulations.
Right. So, the Democrats want no stipulations, and Republicans have a list of stipulations. And so they have been having a hard time coming to an agreement, coming to a consensus about what to do. But I'll get more into that soon.
Okay.
So first, let me break down what the debt ceiling actually is for those out here or out there that don't quite understand. So to kind of just put it into short terms, right? You have a budget. Think of the government as a business with a budget, right? So the boss or account manager, the president, has to create a budget, make proposals, and give it to Congress. And this happens every year in February. Mm-hmm. And Congress takes the proposal from the president and looks at it, evaluates it, and then decides, okay, we're good with this budget. Now we want to add stipulations in and, designate money to certain spaces, add certain bills and other little
funds.
For like stipulations, like little specifications to the budget. So
where to allocate money.
Exactly, where to allocate money. They send that back to the president. The president has to sign off on that, on all the bills. He doesn't have a specific time he has to do it. He can do it whenever he wants, but he has to do it usually before the new fiscal year starts in October. Mm-hmm. So this is a whole process between February to October. Okay. Right? And
7-8 months.
Right. So with what's going on right now with the U.S. debt ceiling, we've hit the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And there's a video I want you to watch. One of my favorites out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's an ABC News interview with Janet Yellen.
Janet Yellen.
Yeah. So we're going to watch this real quick. I'm not going to put the whole video in this video. I'll do little clips of the highlights of what I'm going to talk about after, but you need to see this.
It's a reaction.
Yeah. Okay, you ready?
Ready. See you after the video.
But we do need to raise the debt ceiling to avoid economic calamity. We would simply not have enough cash to meet all of our obligations. And it's widely agreed that financial and economic chaos would ensue. Back in 2011, the U.S. Was downgraded by the credit rating agencies. There would be permanently higher borrowing costs for Americans for buying a home, buying a car, and a failure to raise the debt ceiling would cause a steep economic downturn. Creations should not take place with a gun really to the head of the American people. It simply is unacceptable for Congress to threaten economic calamity for American households. So we need to consider whether the president can go on issuing debt. This would be a constitutional crisis. It's Congress's job to do this. If they fail to do it, we will have an economic and financial catastrophe that will be of our own making. And there is no action that President Biden and the U.S. Treasury can take to prevent that catastrophe. I don't want to consider emergency options. What's important is that members of Congress recognize what their responsibility is and avert what will surely be, regardless of how it's handled, what option is used to handle it, an economic and financial catastrophe. Simply no good options. And the ones that you've listed are among the not good options.
So yeah, Janet Yellen.
I don't know, the video's over.
Yeah. Yeah, Janet Yellen.
Yeah.
What is your reaction to that video? There was a lot of It was a little intense.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of just kept repeating herself.
He kept the questions he was asking her, he kept pressing her about stuff, and she was just like, I don't understand what you don't understand, but the words that are coming out of my mouth. Listen. She said at least 6 times things like economic calamity.
Yeah.
Constitutional crisis. Economic and financial catastrophe. And then what she said? Oh, financial and economic crisis would ensue. She said these things at least 6 times.
Yeah.
In that one interview. And the look on her face, you could tell even like from body psychology, even when he was like asking her about the banking crisis and she was like contagion, she had to swallow. She was like, literally everything that Janet Yellen was saying verbally, physically, emotionally was screaming mass panic. That's what I saw in her eyes, the windows of her soul.
Yeah. The government won't have money to pay their bills, nor pay people like Medicare recipients and Social Security.
Yeah. So that was that's the interview that's got the news world buzzing because they're like, why does Janet Yellen sound so pressed? They're making it seem like her words are extreme, but I don't think they're extreme. I think she knows what she's talking about, at least to a greater extent than what we can understand. And a lot of people are trying to downplay that. I could even tell that with the news anchor, trying to be like, yeah, but there are other emergency measures. And she was like, listen, that's not an option.
He mentioned the 14th Amendment from the president.
Yeah, that's not an option. She's like, we have to raise the debt ceiling or that's it. That's it. That's definitely the body language and the verbiage I got.
And all the responsibility is on Congress.
Right. And she mentioned how the debt ceiling has been raised 78 times.
Since what year was it? Since the 70s or 60s? 1968, I think, did she say?
I'm not quite sure what we'll see it again, but
78 times.
I have here since 1917.
Oh, it's 1917.
Yeah, and so the current debt ceiling is
that's
at
what it was.
31.4 trillion.
31.4?
That's our current debt. Yep. And so within those 78 times, the government has been shut down 22 times. And so what that means is that if we don't reach a consensus for the debt ceiling, that's what happens. So what happens if the US hits the debt ceiling and we don't raise it? According to Janet Yellen, calamity and catastrophe.
Yeah.
But the government shuts down. That means government workers,
Yeah, postal workers.
postal workers, services.
Teachers, they get paid by taxes. Would that be infected?
Yes, everybody will be affected.
Because that's all tax money.
Yes. Well, no, not quite, because I'll get into that. Like national parks, museums, like government websites would be unavailable.
Yeah, like the IRS.
Right. Paying for programs and servicing existing debt. So anything
programs, public programs.
Which
like
ones?
For, like public programs for like, I don't know, whatever, school, homeless, etc.
Right. So which kind of leads into like schools get federal funding.
Food stamps maybe would be like affected.
Yes.
The receiving of it maybe, or less of it.
Yes. So funding for these programs, such as like Social Security, Medicare, any kind of infrastructure spending, education, research, other social programs, federal employees, military spending, they get halted or greatly reduced.
And what's the current debt ceiling?
The current debt ceiling we're at is 31.4 trillion.
31.4 trillion.
Trillion.
Which is more than the US GDP.
More than the US GDP?
Yeah. Our debt has surpassed how much the GDP is.
Honestly, that's...
Once that happens, I'm actually reading a book, about the Ray Dalio book.
Yeah.
They said that's like one of the key factors that start the downfall of an empire. They crumble from within.
Mm-hmm.
So...
I mean, you can only borrow so much money until...
You can't pay your debt off.
You can't pay it off.
Yeah. I don't think World War III would need to happen. China and Russia are just going to sit back and watch us crumble our own...
Yeah, they're just waiting for us to crumble.
They're just waiting for the reserve currency to be pulled. United States cannot take its debt, all the confidence in the dollar, because it's no longer backed by gold. Mm-hmm. It's literally just confidence.
Right.
Once that confidence is taken, forget it.
Exactly. U.S. confidence, and even like external, not only external, but internal investors. That's another way the government gets money.
Yeah.
The confidence from those investors would be pulled.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like a credit check. It's like credit. Everybody has credit.
Crunch.
Exactly.
With a banking crisis.
Yes.
And a debt ceiling.
Exactly.
God Lord.
Exactly. There's so many layers to this cake that which is why the government's panicking, because we have a economic crisis right now. And if we fail to pay our debts and hit the debt ceiling and not raise it, it's pretty much a wrap. Because usually something like that would cause us to go into a recession, but we're already in a recession.
Yeah.
So we would fall into a depression. That'd be it. So our credit rating, countries get credit ratings.
Yeah.
Our credit rating would go down. Just like if you don't pay your bills on time, your credit rating will go down. The United States,
just like they take your house, you don't pay your mortgage, they repossess your house. They'll repossess some. I'd say it's a debt.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, technically...
I think the largest holders are the UK, China, Japan, and I forget the other, but it's China, Japan, and the UK, I believe, hold the most amount of U.S. debt.
Japan has the highest holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds, if that's correct, based on my understanding.
Yeah.
And they're starting to curb on that, and that's also panicking the government, or the government's panicking because of that, because, again...
Everyone's backing away from the dollar.
Exactly. So this whole our current economic situation, and then this debt ceiling crisis is crumbling the value of the dollar, and can spiral us out of control. We're worried about a recession right now, but like we could easily slip into a depression if we don't pick things up.
Yeah.
So I mean, not only so you have things like the impact of federal programs and servicing debt because we still have to pay interest on our debt. So people invest in us and we pay interest, kind of like a dividend, but not a dividend. We pay interest on the debt we hold with them.
Yeah, we borrow debt for the dollar.
Right. And if we can't pay that, we become insolvent. And now they're like, hey, well, now we're going to charge you higher interest. So not raising the debt ceiling will cause our interest, our credit rate to go down and our interest to go up from our debt. So now they're saying, well, now if you want to borrow money from us, now you have to pay it at this rate because we're not confident that you can.
Exorbitant amounts of interest.
Exactly.
If the debt ceiling doesn't get raised.
Right. We don't feel confident. So now that interest, so we have to pay higher interest on our debt. And we were worried about inflation and the Federal Reserve and the Fed rate. That's going to make it even worse. So our rate is so high already right now that it'll become even worse if we default.
Which then will cause a housing crash.
It will cause a housing crash. It will cause a stock market crash.
Oh, the stock market.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The stock market will crash.
Yeah. It's going to drop another 10%
The
as
dollar will crash. It will accelerate BRICS de-dollarization.
Yeah.
Because our dollar is becoming worthless. We'll become close to worthless if we can't
Even our
figure out
neighbors have
something.
backed away. Mexico.
Right. And so this can like really when Janet Yellen says economic and constitutional catastrophe and crisis,
Extreme inflation.
I don't think she's kidding. I think we're teetering with something here that even the people in the markets and the businesses can kind of see is, oh, we've come to this point before, but now it feels a little bit more serious. It feels actually much more serious, much more heavy, right? And that like affects everybody. That affects everybody. Mm-hmm. So basically, we reached our capacity we exhausted it. It says the national debt capacity to borrow cash was capped at 31.4 trillion and we exhausted it in January 19th. So
this past January 19th.
This past January. So we've already capped our debt, right? And right now, like we were talking about, the Republicans and the Democrats are in a standoff because what did Janet say? The Treasury Department since Jan 19 has been using extraordinary measures to come up with enough cash to pay the government's bills on time. Now, words and adjectives like extraordinary.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, like, I don't want to get too crazy, but this whole financial situation on the market with
SVB, Silicon Valley Bank? You're talking about the banks?
SVB and what was the
First
John
Republic?
Bankman-Fried?
Sam
Bankman-Fried?
Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX.
And laundering money and the connection to the government. I think extraordinary conspiracy idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't come for me. If I'm missing in the middle of the night, I've hit the mark. But
he's out of jail now, right? Prison.
Yeah, he is.
I'm surprised. Well, let's not go down that road.
So why? Okay, so now we understand why Janet Yellen might be talking like this, right? But on a more logical scale, one moment. On a more logical scale, so there was this article from U.S. News titled "U.S. Debt Ceiling Deadline: What Investors Should Know," and they outlined that what triggered Yellen's ominous forecast was the government's weak tax receipts in April, which tallied 35% lower than receipts received in April 2022. Why is this important? Janet Yellen is saying that we're going to reach the limit and run out of money as soon as June 1st. And the Fed is saying like early June, right? Other creditors and assessments are coming in and saying July. The reason why that's relevant for taxes is because the government gets money from investors, from our taxes, and from our bonds and selling bonds and treasuries and some other smaller stuff. But those are like the three main things. If we default on our payments, we lose the investment money. That is gone. If we default on our bonds lose money. Default on our payments, our bonds lose money and lose value. What's left? Tax dollars. So,
CDs.
Well, the government doesn't get money from You mean individual CDs? No, no, no. That's banks. That's the bank.
Well,
No, they get mostly their money.
central banks.
Right. That's on an individual level. I'm talking about like grand scheme. The government gets money from bonds, from their treasury bonds, from investors, and from the IRS, from our taxes. You get rid of two of those, all we have is left is taxes. So that's why the analysts coming in are saying, well, Janet Yellen might be a little too aggressive, saying June, because the Treasury will reach cash infusion from non-withheld tax revenue around June 15th of this year, which they think will push back the deadline, like when we actually run out of money, to like July. So basically, all the tax revenue from us just doing taxes will come in and save us a little bit of time. It's like, okay, we're not out of money yet. We got this money from,
Yeah.
from the people.
Yeah, most of the
So,
central banks think
yeah.
it's going to be more like July, August, latest. August.
Central banks for what?
Their predictions,
Oh, August?
yeah, which the central banks have like an extreme amount of power.
Oh, I haven't heard anything about August, but I've heard that some
August
other
would be like the latest. I think the medium guess was like July.
July. Oh, okay, yeah. June, July, August.
Yeah, like summer.
So the scale is like June, July, August. Some point during that time, we're gonna run out of money.
Yeah.
And we're not exactly sure how much tax is coming in to save our behinds if we don't raise the debt ceiling, but we know that it's way less than it was last year. And we're in a recovering economy from COVID, right? So
Yeah.
that's saying a lot. So McCarthy here's something else the article says. McCarthy put forward the Limit, Save, Grow Act of 2023 as a preventative measure on April 19th. And then the House passed the bill on the 26th. So what this does is aims to suspend the federal debt limit through March 31st, 2024, or increase the federal debt limit by 1.5 trillion, whichever comes first, and curb government spending by 4.5 trillion over the next decade, right? So they're really putting in measures to help try to prevent the economy. If things go downhill, we're done for. We're pretty much done for, and that's why that's why the feeling is so heavy.
I heard that's one of the reasons why they're going crazy with the interest rates, so they can make bonds more valuable for investors, because in a recession, the government wants to sell a lot of bonds so they can sell their debt.
Yeah.
So that people get the interest. So the higher interest rates, people get a better return on their bond. So they're more willing to buy bonds, which is just government debt,
Yeah.
to help the government get out of debt.
Exactly.
And I think that's why Jerome Powell is going. Well, one of the reasons why he's going a little crazy with the interest rates, other than inflation, the federal government just wants to make bonds more valuable to pay off their debt, to help with their debt ceiling.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you remember, Jerome Powell is in charge of
The Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is there to help manage
The Treasury.
the Treasury and U.S. debt. And so that's another tool that the country uses. And Jerome Powell is just he sees the short-term problem, but they also can see the long-term problem.
Yeah.
And so aggressively raising rates in a scramble to try to raise revenue through taxes and, interest.
On bonds.
Right. So, and bonds are considered the strongest security globally. It's like held that position.
U.S. bonds?
Yeah, U.S. bonds.
Yeah.
And our security is really
long-term?
going on, long term, yeah. So they're really trying to push that. But just to give like an idea, if you look at this chart of the U.S. national debt over the last 100 years, you'll see that the debt has skyrocketed. Like if you look at 1922, it was way below 5 trillion. If you go to the website, you can manipulate it. I can't manipulate this image right here, but over the past 100 years, the U.S. federal debt has increased from 408 billion in 1922 to 30.93 trillion in 2022.
Yeah, and you can see here, more or less, it at the beginning, 20 years ago, around 2002, 2003, would put us somewhere in the $10 trillion range. So in the last 20 years, it's essentially tripled.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years.
Yeah. So,
So since the beginning, so somewhere around like George Bush to Barack Obama, it just took off.
yes. Yeah. It's not a good look. It's not good news. It's not a good vibe. It's not a good vibe. I would...
United States, Venezuela, part dos. No,
And I
not
think
hope.
it's important to note that we have never in the history of the United States defaulted on our debt.
on the debt.
Never. And we
No.
could. They're saying that this might be the time.
Oh, jeez.
Something to keep into consideration when you're looking at that chart is that the debt ceiling and national debt are not the same thing. Debt ceiling is they'll raise it over time. So the debt ceiling so you have national debt and the debt ceiling, right? The debt ceiling is here and the national debt will go up and up until we hit that ceiling. Mm-hmm. And so that's why they do a fiscal budget every year. And now the debt ceiling, the debt ceiling helps to, try to cap how much national debt we have. And that's why they do a budget every year. But I mean, so, okay, just put in layman's terms, the national debt is the actual amount of money the government owes, while the debt ceiling is the limit on how much more money the government can borrow to add to that debt. So that's just, that's it. But yeah, that's the debt ceiling. Everybody do you have anything to add to that? Keep aware. Keep up to date. Pay attention. Your future. Get a passport.
Get your money out of the dollar. Oy, oy, oy. So, we have no meetings planned. Well, not us.
Well, they postponed it last week. At the time of this recording, they postponed it last week for this week.
For this week?
Yeah.
I thought there was no known meeting.
Well, I couldn't find a date, but they are planning to get back together this week. We'll probably know
this
at some
coming
point.
week?
Yeah. If it's not announced on Monday, I don't know when.
So second or third week of May.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
Get your passports.
Get a passport. I keep telling my sister she doesn't listen. You know what? Also, the passport, it's getting harder to get one. So get them.
I need a new one.
You need a new one?
Mine has 8 years on it, so I have 2 years left.
Oh, okay.
But I want to get a new one.
Okay.
It's 8 years.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Right now, the news is saying that it's getting more
It's
difficult
like
to
12
get
weeks
one.
now.
12 weeks now?
Ish.
Is that
8 to 12.
Without rush?
I think Rush is 8 now. 8 weeks, and then the regular is 12, so it's like a 4-week. But I think they just say that because I got my passport. My mother got hers, a new one, and she got hers in like 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. We'll get a passport.
6 or 7. So yet another episode of Chalk Talk.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good morning, good afternoon, and a great night. Take care.
Peace.